Well, it's a proud day for the team here at eNCA. Two of our staff are part of the Mail and Guardian's 200 Young South Africans. Palesa Manaleng is a para-athlete and a journalist here who's won all sorts of titles, and she won the nod in the sports category. And Kyla Herrmannsen also made the list. She's a producer at Checkpoint. Of course, that show airs right here on eNCA. Ladies, thank you so much for joining me, and congratulations. I was there last night, and I must say, in as much as my generation in the media felt like we were the first to do certain things, I felt like I needed to get out and start working again after listening to everything that both of you has achieved. So congratulations. Palesa, you were a bit taken aback to all the attention last night. What did that feel like, to be acknowledged amongst so many other very impressive young people?
It was, you know what, I was in shock. Because everyone else is doing such great things. You know, when one of the speakers spoke about imposter syndrome, I felt like I didn't belong there, because everyone's got scientists there and farmers, and they're like, you're here for sport. I mean, sports is great, I love sports, but I just felt a bit out. And everyone coming up and saying congratulations just threw me off a bit. But
I suppose it would be more not just about your sport, because if you read the write-up in today's Mail and Guardian, which everybody should go and buy, we also learn about your writing career, your journalism career, the fact that you've also tutored people in different languages. That's quite a body of work outside of your achievements in sports as well. So it must be difficult to juggle those demands.
It is. I mean, working full-time and trying to become a professional athlete and also trying to become a writer, like a published writer, it's constantly trying to move, trying to reach all those goals at the same time and not drop the ball is a lot of work. But I enjoy it.
Is it sometimes a little bit difficult, because as a journalist we often have to tell other people's stories? Now people just want to hear your story.
I mean, I'm used to being in the background, talking about how other people have achieved what they've achieved. Talking about myself was a bit, it's not my thing.
Yes.
I get a bit shy.
But you understand how inspirational it is? Has that sunk in yet?
Not yet.
Kyla, speaking of telling other people's stories, you're a producer and investigative journalist at Checkpoint, and you were telling the story of people who lost their lives and were suffering as a result of what went on at Life Esidimeni long before it became headline news. And I'm told that those authorities who finally started paying attention to what was happening there, the Ombudsman, said the work that you did was imperative to them starting to piece together the horrors of what was going on there. Where did this need to tell people stories, especially those who were not in position to tell their stories? Where did that come from?
I think for me, you know, that mantra of journalists telling, you know, the stories of the voiceless has always annoyed me a bit, because they're not the voiceless. They have incredibly loud, important voices. I think our job is just to acknowledge that and to resource people in a way where their stories come across. So I think when you say, where did this drive come from, I remember being 12 years old and already wanting to be a journalist. And I think because what I was perceiving is that in the world, I think, you know, some people, I don't know who these people are, or society, decide that certain people's stories are more important than others. And that was something that I wanted to look at and try kind of mess around with a bit and say, no, everyone's story is important.
Now, you made several documentaries around that story specifically, but obviously you've done other work as well. You speak of it being a humbling experience every time somebody decides to open themselves up to tell you some very, very intimate stories about their life.
Definitely. I mean, I think, you know, we take it for granted sometimes, I think, as journalists, especially being television journalists. You come into people's homes with massive cameras. You're asking them the most difficult and vulnerable questions in their moment of trauma. You haven't really even given them time to process what's happened. And obviously with myself, I come from a privileged position. I'm often not speaking the language that I would want to be speaking in an interview, you know, to really come across respectfully. And all of those barriers aside, it amazes me the inner strength that people have always shown, that I've always experienced in them articulating their story. And I think also even in their pain, sometimes seeing that in them telling their story, they feel validated. They feel like actually someone's listening. And that's always, it's humbling and it's surprising each and every time. It doesn't ever get old.
Now, you've been acknowledged as one of South Africa's top 200 young people. Has your youth ever counted against you when you've set about telling these difficult stories?
I think sometimes, perhaps as a woman, I think sometimes people don't take you seriously. But certainly, I mean, you know, often it's been interesting, especially working for Checkpoint. What we always push for is accountability. So you get to that difficult point in a story where you now need to hold a CEO accountable, hold a minister accountable, hold a con artist accountable. And I think, yeah, in that sense, youth does, it's an obstacle against you. But at the same time, I find if people underestimate you, it gives you more of an impetus to prove them wrong. So sometimes it can be to your advantage because you're just going to try that extra bit harder to show them that youth are capable.
Palesa, speaking about youth being capable, when we speak in the offices about our colleagues, and your name came up obviously today after last night's recognition, I'm always struck by everybody's reaction being, oh, Palesa, she's such a light. When she comes into a room, she just lights up the room. But you've come out of a few very, very difficult years. You were a star athlete before you had the accident that eventually ended up you having to be in a wheelchair. Does it seem like a lifetime ago, or can you still remember those dark moments when you had that moment of deciding how you were going to face the rest of your life?
I mean, I still remember those moments. It's going to be 5 years in September. And I think what reminds me constantly of the change in my life is an accessibility to the most basic thing. Going into a shop, there's a step, I have to ask for help. There are no pavements half the time around South Africa. So I'm either on the road, I'm going to wait for a stranger to help me up. So I'm constantly reminded of the changes in my life, by the simple little things that everyone else takes for granted, you know. And when you bring it up, I don't think that people understand how a little step makes a difference, or a little ramp makes a difference.
Something we take for granted.
Because that's the difference for me between my freedom and you, I mean, you taking it away and having that freedom to wheelie around as I want without having to say, hi, excuse me, my name is, can you please, you know, even when I don't want to talk to people, I have to talk to people. You know,
look me in the eye when you're speaking to me.
You understand?
Yeah.
And, you know, the things of when you're in groups and people want to stand, so I have to look up to them and talk to them instead of having eye contact.
And what does that do to a power dynamic when you're speaking to somebody, either in a work or social environment?
Yeah, it can be work, can be social. It's you know, it's as if now they're talking down to me and I must look up to them. You know, it's different situations. You know, be it work, be it school, be it at home.
Now, it would have been very easy for you just to decide, well, I've got everything stacked up against me, I'm just going to make everything about me. But you are still continuing to do work to raise awareness for differently abled people, writing people's stories and that kind of thing. What keeps you going?
Second chance at life. I mean, almost died, I'm here. Might as well use my being here for something good.
That's something that we all can pay attention to. You are working very hard at your sports career. Quickly before we finish off, you've been going overseas. Tell us what you're training for.
Olympics. This I just crossed my toes.
If you say it on television, it has to happen.
It has to happen. Universe. Next year is the Paralympics, and I want to be selected as part of the team that goes to represent South Africa, and not just represent South Africa, but come back with a medal.
And what do we have to look out for until then?
We've got a few competitions coming up between UJ and hopefully eNCA. Yes, I said it.
Yes.
That I'll take part locally to improve my speed so I can be faster. And then next year in Feb, because that's where the final selection is, the national championships. So I need to improve my times so I can be good enough to be part of the team.
Good enough indeed. Kyla, before we finish off here, these important stories that we need to tell week in and week out. You're 30 years old and you're dealing with very, very life-changing stories on a day-to-day basis. Do you find it difficult to relate to other 30-year-olds out there because of the gravity of what you're dealing with in your day-to-day work?
I mean, people are often quite shocked, you know, if I tell them what I'm working on, and they always say, how do you emotionally cope with that, or how do you walk away from a story and not be emotionally affected? And I think that is actually one of the things that I'm grappling with, and I think journalists, you continually are sort of updating the way that you try to sort of emotionally be warm and let yourself into people's stories, but then you also have to have a slight defense mechanism against sort of absorbing everyone's
But the best stories
emotions.
are told with heart, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what I'm always trying to do. And I think even in people telling their stories, I think if you approach someone in a very empathetic sort of way, it makes them feel a lot more comfortable to give you really honest, quite emotional answers. So to answer your question, I mean, I think what we saw last night, which I found amazing and inspiring, is that actually there's a lot of 30-year-olds or under 30, over 30, doing quite astounding things.
Which is what was so powerful about last night's event, and the fact that it was broadcast into people's homes, and people, little girls like you, little boys, could see that, you know, I'm a nerd, I'm into books, I'm into sports, and that's okay, one can achieve something. I hate asking people this question because you feel like you're in an interview, Kyla. What are your aims and dreams going forward?
It feels like a job interview.
Paying the bills at the end of the month. I know that's something for all of us. What are you hoping to be your legacy with at least this chapter of your life?
I guess just telling stories that really made people think, and that sought accountability and shed light on issues that people might be ignoring or don't think are important. For example, when I started the Life Esidimeni story, you know, mental health, it's not fashionable. It's, you know, even government doesn't pay it enough attention. So even getting that story onto a national platform involved kind of seeing that something was important and trying to elevate it at an early level. So I think I'd like to keep trying to do that, holding people accountable. I'm trying to learn isiZulu, so that's a short-term goal.
I guess you're putting us all in the shade again.
Yeah, I guess just to have the privilege to keep making powerful stories that hopefully people watch.
Well, both of you are a testament to that and are powerful stories in your own right. So thank you so much for coming to share some of your thoughts and achievements with us. We wish you everything the best, and we're very proud to call you colleagues, both of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much. That is Palesa DJ Manaleng. You can find her on Twitter under that handle as well. Para-athlete superstar, in our eyes in any case. And Kyla Herrmannsen, crack producer at Checkpoint. So please keep an eye out for her work as well. And they are two of the Mail and Guardian's 200 young South Africans. Be sure to buy your copy of the Mail and Guardian to read about them and some other fantastic young people doing amazing things in our country.